you can realize higher states of consciousness, but you have to do the healing and clearing work, because otherwise it's going to be veiled. So you can be one with everything. For example, you have this realization, I'm one with everything, I'm the self with the capital S, I'm all that exists. But then it was my experience, it got veiled because of karma coming up. So you can also call this just karma. So stuck energies that were in my system, past experiences that I didn't live through, and they were just coming up because they were triggered, or a certain situation brought them up, because of a person or because of a smell or whatever. It came up, and then I was veiled. So my whole experience was again this specific emotion. So let's say anger, and the unity was gone. And I just projected the anger into my environment, right? To people or situations and stuff like that. I mean, this is how the human system works. And this is why I started to heal and clear my system. So I put a lot of work into healing and clearing the system, because then the unity started to become stable.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. Welcome back to the channel, my dear friends. I'm your humble servant and seafood, Daoist Master San Qing, and another incredible conversation, another profound being, reminding us, remembering who we are through her incredible light and resonance. I want to welcome to the podcast Eva Muller, who is a healer, a very humble healer. I love the fact that humility breeds and grows this incredible knowing. And from that, so many people are just supercharged just with your presence. Welcome to the podcast, my dear friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation.
Yes. Why don't we start off with something really basic and just some origins of how you got here?
Yeah. Okay, just really quickly, I'm from Austria. So first we realized we have a big time difference there, so in the US. And yeah, so just about my life story, I wasn't always into energy healing, like from a young age on. It came in a little bit later. But basically all my life long, I was looking for something more. And I always thought I'm going to find it in the world. So basically when I went to school, I thought when I finish school, then I will have it. I don't know what it was, but there was just something I was looking for. So I didn't find it when I finished high school. Then I was looking in a university degree. I studied law and mediation, and same again. Couldn't find it. And because there was a lot of resistance to normal life at that time, just how life was unfolding. Life itself wasn't bad, but just how I experienced it, because I was looking for something, I couldn't find it. So there was just resistance to what was unfolding. There was also suffering going on. And then after law school, I started working in real estate, same pattern. I thought when I'm very good at my job and when I earn good money and stuff like that, I will find it, and I didn't. And then I was like, after a while working, I was like, okay, I just have to look somewhere else and not where I was at that time. And so I decided to take some time off, just off work, and lived off my saving for a while, and was just looking. I didn't really do anything specific, but I was hoping that it will come to me. And it did in a way. So I found meditation. And basically, from the beginning on, when I started meditating, I always meditated with a spiritual transmission. So like every meditation I did, I received a spiritual transmission. I joined a meditation group and just started a daily practice, and received this transmission. And I learned, I didn't know at that time like what this transmission was for, but it was for spiritual awakening, for awakening consciousness, so that I can experience higher levels of consciousness. And then I was like, okay, I just looked there for what I was looking for before in the world. I'm just going to look there, right? So this is what I started. And I have a very dedicated personality. So when I find something that I like, I'm all in, so I started meditating every day to a transmission, went to spiritual retreats, did online retreats, read books, like audiobooks, just like all my life I dedicated to spirituality. And then after a year, so I experienced various different levels of consciousness over a course of like 3.5 years. So self-realization, unity consciousness, Brahman consciousness, and empowered Brahman consciousness, and basically the return back to the. So, should I briefly explain what they are? Like,
Sure, if you like.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So just very briefly, so self-realization is when you realize you are the self and you're not the body, the emotions, the ego, the thoughts, and stuff like that. So you're something else. Then unity consciousness, when you realize, when you have the experience that you become one with everything. So all creation, everything that exists is one. And then Brahman consciousness is basically the stepping outside of creation and being fully detached of the human experience of the human, looking into creation. It's a very interesting phase. And then coming back, the human aspects are coming back later then into, so you basically come back into creation. The human aspects are coming back until the whole spirituality and human life starts to become one again. And then you're like the true nature. So I call it the true nature. You're the true nature living a human life experience. And yeah, this was like the journey. And on the way, a spiritual transmission started to come in for myself. And I started to work with people in one-on-one sessions and group sessions. And I'm transmitting this transmission. So it's an energy transmission. And yeah. So I stopped there, and yeah, this is the brief summary.
Blammo. This audience will be very familiar with a progression or ascension of self-realization. But then, of course, many of those stages for most people are conceptual. And to be realized, there is a detaching and attaching of this thing we call substance, the Fajin, which is basically the inner interweaving of all things as one, that you are all things and nothing at the same time. And so what I love about what you're saying is it's a feeling. And so that goes beyond conceptual contemplation within the intellect, the finite, corrupted, bankrupt mind. We are experiencing something that is beyond comprehension. It doesn't have to be. It's just now. And that is the potency of your messaging. And of course, furthermore, what you're sharing with the audience is beyond the words. Some people may master things that they consider imprinting, imbuing an essence, but that residual effect is transitory because it's only measured by someone's belief system. So it's met at that moment, but you return to it and it will no longer be. It will fade away just as the material state of the physical flesh. And that's the beauty of what we're experiencing with your wisdom teaching is it's now and it's not transitory. There's a permanence. There's a very dense and expansive energy, which I think is contradictory to most people's Hollywood version of what they think energy is, which when you expand and you are all things, that means you're no place, no person, no thing. You're every place, every person, everything. How is that measured? How would you measure that for your own self-mastery and also, I would say, your own wisdom teaching to others? How is that measured so it's not a delusional state of grandeur as opposed to some type of transitory psychology as a now moment permanence?
Yeah, so basically through my work, I give people the direct experience. So by going through all these levels of consciousness and stuff like that, the ability, I guess, opened up that I could see people's energy fields, and I see how the energy field is changing when a certain state is experienced, for example. And also that when you go through this level, that the system, so I call the system, the body and the energy bodies are undergoing certain permanent changes and they stay. And I see this, and this is what I'm doing for people. So I'm, you actually, you would have to go through all these levels to realize the true nature, which has certain aspects, you're experiencing all the time. It's only like on the experiential level. It's, of course, like you said, it's not on the intellectual level. But with my work and the transmission, it brings in these aspects already for people to experience, even though they are not there yet. So I just call it's liberating the system, and it's a process, of course, but it's, every time you do so certain work with me, or you connect to the transmission is helping to liberate the system over time. And then you can experience that in your everyday life, because on the one hand, you're receiving the transmission, it's changing the system, but then it's also about how is it manifesting in my everyday life experience, because this is the integration process. I mean, the mind can only realize certain things, and that's amazing, but then there needs to be the system that's following, and then there needs to be the manifestation in life experience. So these are the steps, and the transmission is helping with all these steps. So it's a direct experience. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes many senses to many questions for most people. And, from a Daoist perspective, we always start with the physicality, physical body, energy body, spirit body, sun body, earth body, moon body, oneness body, ultimate body, and then you are being all things. So that ascended state sort of erases temporary, transitory psychology and the mind, the intellect, what you want to call it, ego, personality. So if you start at ground zero, you're able to move into that. When I mention Fai-Jin is signaling what we call a potency, a power within you. But furthermore, it starts with something as simplistic as the fascia. So I don't have to connect with someone physically, but generally speaking, if I'm giving you an implementation or directive of a system, such example, Tai Chi or Bagua or any of these systems that I teach people, it's conceptual until otherwise noted. So as you apply the flesh, the tactile resistance from one vehicle to another, all healing I've ever witnessed has never taken me physically connecting with another person in the same room. Yet when it's something as elementary as a physical contact, you drop into the fascia and become the puppet master to the opponent. Furthermore, the subject or the healee, the person that is receiving, and that is quite something when you can shift their energy. Now, that's elementary sort of infantile stuff that you start there, and then you move from that to, as you progress through the physical body and mastered that, realizing that the layers of this puppeteering starts with the fascia, the physical body, the skin, the dermal layer, the bacteria. All these things are layers that you have to synergize with your environment so that it's meant for a permanence. Because I feel like, and maybe you can speak on this, over 36 years, I've been witnessing this stuff consciously. Everyone that I've seen, let me just rewind back to like when I first started 36 years ago. Anyone I've known within that beginning as healers, they're all dead. And you're like, what? Because they have yet to master the understanding that this is not a sacrifice. The physical flesh is not a sacrifice. It is something that is a vehicle to harness as a container, because the resonance is only held and becomes permanent if you're able to hold it, because the human being is so fragile, and that entry level is suggestibility through the mental emotional state. So once you go mental emotional, you're very fragile, very suggestible. And that generally is the thread that unravels the human body. And basically harbors and nurtures and breeds disease furthermore through that mental emotional state seeping into the flesh. What have you noticed within your own experience as a healer? Because people spend their energy. They're not aware that this body is a vehicle, and all healers, any person that's ever stepped up on my doorstep, which happens on a daily basis, mastered gurus, you name it, light workers, energy healers, whatever you want to call them, they are yet to understand what the constitution is. We refer to the Qing, and how that potency will determine your longevity within this reincarnation.
Okay, so how I'm just going to share how I talk about this. So throughout our lifetime, we collect or we pile up energies in our system. So from the day on, it's probably around the age 3, 4, 5, when the system starts closing down and energy stops flowing through. So before we are in an emotion, energy is flowing through, like we live the emotion in the present moment, the energy is flowing through and then it's gone. And then in the next moment, the next emotion is coming up and so on. So every moment and has different emotions that are unfolding. And then there comes a time when this kind of stops. So we're not allowed, or it just doesn't work, that we fully live our emotions, and then they get stuck in our system. So we pile up a lot of emotions in our system, also through traumatic experiences and stuff like that. Then we have past life influences, we have ancestral influences, and we have wrong beliefs and also like the wrong identification. We have the ego, we have the I thought, and misunderstandings in our system. We have energy patterns and all of that. And all this is gathered in the system, so in the body and the energy body. And I see this, that the transmission is working on a cellular level, because every cell has also like an energy body and there is information in it. And the transmission that's coming in is also just information, and it starts changing the information on the cellular level so that the whole system is receiving the change over time. And I'm just assisting. So when I close my eyes and I tune into the energy, I get information what I can do in people's energy fields. And mostly it's like opening up and expanding the energy field. So this is the most important part, that the energy can come in and work on people's systems, and at the same time that these stuck energies can leave. And also what I experienced on my journey is that you can realize higher states of consciousness, but you have to do the healing and clearing work, because otherwise it's going to be veiled. So you can be one with everything. For example, you have this realization, I'm one with everything. I'm the self with the capital S. I'm all that exists. But then it was my experience, it got veiled because of karma coming up. So you can also call this just karma. So stuck energies that were in my system, past experiences that I didn't live through, and they were just coming up because they were triggered, or a certain situation brought them up, because of a person or because of a smell or whatever. It came up, and then I was veiled. So my whole experience was again this specific emotion. So let's say anger, and the unity was gone. And I just projected the anger into my environment, right? To people or situations and stuff like that. I mean, this is how the human system works. And this is why I started to heal and clear my system. So I put a lot of work into healing and clearing the system, because then the unity started to become stable, for example. So this is a very, very important part, that the system is open. And energy is flowing, life energy is flowing. So life energy flows from the root to the crown chakra. It always flows in the present moment, and then it brings us the life experiences. And with life flowing through our system, so the body and the energy bodies are reacting. So there is emotions coming up, there are thoughts coming up, there's the senses, the 5 senses in play. And this is basically what's happening. And if the system is working in a more optimal way, that means it's fairly cleared, so most blockages are gone. It's open, and life energy can just flow, and life is then experienced as being a flow. We just basically flow through life. Things are just coming in, and we act on them. So it's a full surrender to life, having a fully open and surrendered system. with no resistance, no anger, no fear, and stuff like that. So these emotions are all in the way of life energy flowing. Yeah, and the true nature is, so this is what I was talking about, is the human aspect of us. So I said, this is how I talk about it. We have a human, and then we have the true nature behind it. And even though we realize our true nature and we fully embody that, so this silence, it's always there, it never leaves, like this, it's the it never dies, it's divine, it's just it's the main experience. And the human, if we want to say there are layers, is experienced within, although it's happening at the same time. But you could also say it's a different layer, it's the human. So we still have the human. And even though we're on the path of awakening and we realize the true nature and we know that we are that, it's very easy to ignore the human. But it's also possible to heal and clear the human so that we can have a nice human life experience at the same time while we realize our true nature. But because it doesn't necessarily mean, when we realize the true nature, that the human follows. So we have to actively work on that as well. So this is my experience. Yeah, and this is what I'm doing.
Very, very nice. It's interesting how people come to their own epiphanies. And, there's always a million ways up the mountain. I always remind people, if you dismiss someone else's belief system, you dismiss your own. And this is something that is very deep in the ancient ritualistic nature of Daoist alchemy. It'll always remind the man who's never left the village, let him know he's seen the world. It all lies within you. And this sort of like participation of the humanistic simplicity of the condition that we speak of, that would present itself as the flesh that looks back at you in the mirror as your identity, does not require any participation in this default state that you speak of as the now moment. And that refers to the Taoist understanding, where everything is a bellows, everything is contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. Your position is to acquire that path that returns you to whole, as the definition of healing. So the merging of yin and yang, everything within this reality is a dualistic dance of symbiosis between yin and yang elements, which is a byproduct of the transformation of this material state that returns us to the void, the primordial womb, the primordial mother, which is all things. And that creates from darkness light. And light and darkness are two of the same. Furthermore, within this material state, yin is the absorption of all colors, yang is the emission of all colors. And the center point is the vesica. We refer to it as the Wu Ji, the primordial mother. It's the ability to master a repeatable experience that you can cultivate to return to that whole state. That's where magical, mystical things take place. And furthermore, we return to that resonance. It's a resonance. All the other things is very much the delusion of the human condition, emotions, thoughts, all this kind of stuff is interesting but infantile. And we remind people that this is another expression. Human beings get so caught up in the trigger, the trauma, my path, my self-realization. What does that mean? Who am I? And when someone asks me, Jifu, why am I here? Why not? Because the darkness, the void, is the very oscillating and symbiotic experience of yin and yang. So from that breath is material. That is the primordial state of awareness. And when you hit the unified state, you get what we call is wu wei, effortless action, effortless effort. This is evidence of that, is synchronistic, serendipitous moments of, holy shit, I am a lucky person. Because you're in the flow, as my dear friend Bruce Lee would say, I'm in the flow, baby. And that flow will present itself because there is no limitation. You embody that primordial yin, which will present itself as an element within this material state, which you will see as something as hypnotic as water itself. It will go where no man can go. It will reveal all things right here, right now, through the potency of the morphing that yin has. Yet the evidence of yang is the evidence of yin, which is the evidence of the primordial mother. That is a drastic difference. People go black and white, yin and yang, up and down, in and out, heaven and hell. None of that exists within a Taoist path. So when you get into the infantile state of human condition, it's understandable because it's a transmutation at a subatomic level of the origins of the creation of all things, which would form itself in human flesh. And that dance between those two energies show you this evidence.
And it's very fascinating. So when you say like the origin of light, so the light I'm working with is the source of source. I had like an experience in meditation. So my consciousness left my body. I left creation because unity is experienced in creation, and there is beyond creation. So we can actually step outside of creation, look into creation from the outside. But there is a source of source, which is fascinating. So a light that basically creates everything in creation. It contains everything that's in creation. And for some reason, I went up there. This light introduced itself. It merged with my system, and it told me I got back what was mine before, and now is basically the time I can use it. And I call it the transmission of the highest truth. And when people are connected to that, they're pulled towards their personal highest truth. So basically the most optimum timeline they can experience, meaning everything that's not of their highest truth can fall away. They realize it. Some things will fall away by themselves, but most of the time they will be more aware. So they will be more aware what's serving them, what not, what people they're good for them and what not, and if they should stay in their job and stuff like that. So they will just realize, am I actually living my highest truth or not? And if not, they can let it go. And then there is this state of neutralization, of balance, okay, where everything is balanced. But then from that state, so first they have to let go of everything. So they're mostly there, they let go of everything, they go into balance. And then from that balance, they can even be moved to the personal highest truth. And it's a constant pull and a constant change of the system, and a constant, opening of potential that's there, but everything is happening in the present moment because past and future are starting to collapse because it doesn't actually exist. It's just a mechanism of the human system. The human system is creating a past and a future. It doesn't really exist. So past and future is totally gone. But again, it's a process. So everything is experienced in the present moment. Everything is coming in the present moment. What's needed also the potentials. We have such a big potential, which we can't see all at once. But if we're open and if the highest truth is coming in, it comes in the present moment when we need it. So this is what the transmission is doing. And I don't come from any path or any teaching. So everything I know, I learned by doing. So how the human system looks like, for example, and how I can work in it, I just learned by doing hundreds and hundreds of one-on-one sessions. The energy basically showed me the way around. And the same with the group sessions. So I realized working with people on that level where I do, so on the emotional level, I can work with one person or I can work with a whole group. It doesn't matter. It's the same healing in the group. It's even stronger because the energy is stronger. So I can do that too. And now it's revealing itself that I can also work on the collective level because it's exactly the same pattern, energy pattern. And I can just remove energies. I can remove low vibrational energies and karma and stuff like that from all these levels. And this is now something that's coming in, which is very fascinating. So I love that this is always like a constant path, a constant unfolding of new things. It keeps it exciting as well, for the human aspect. And so this is how I see this all. And it's really, this is why I use very simple way of describing it, because it's just my own personal experience, what I'm sharing, and there is nothing, no teaching behind it. So this is Yeah.
Well, that would be a misnomer and a falsity, because there is teaching, because you're receiving information, you're then
Oh, from
disseminating.
the energy. Yes, yes. Okay. But I mean, I wasn't following a specific path. That's just what I wanted to say, like a specific path of awakening. Yeah. Like
Well,
a very, like a specific one, you know?
right. I mean, if I rewound back to 100,000 years ago, when the Yellow Emperor rode on a celestial dragon down to planet Earth and was magnetized to the Earth for 18 days and nights, and whispers of the universe were given to him, the very foundations of Chinese culture as you know it, including the seed and creation of Daoist alchemy, that the watered down version would be Chinese medicine. Furthermore, what you're speaking of in relation to a embodiment or absorption of stagnant energies within the flesh is a foundational Chinese medicine concept. Most practitioners are not aware of the deeper nature of it, and they start with the 12 meridians, where there is actually 81 meridians, 81 energy pathways within, deep seated within the physical flesh, that once activated, it becomes as a permanence, just as the physical flesh, because it's part of this transmuted experience that you can regulate and show evidence. I think the most important thing is, I'm a Pepsi challenge guy. I don't know whether you are familiar with the Pepsi challenge from the 80s. So it was a campaign that they did where people will go out and, they wanted to show that Pepsi tastes better than Coke. And so they put a cup over the top of it, and they'd interview people in the street and go, I want you to do a taste test. Drink these two and tell me which one is Coca-Cola. And they drink it and they go, well, it's got to be, this is so good. And they pull it up and they'll be like, it's Pepsi. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. It's so good. Well, that's the Pepsi challenge, the taste test. I'll do the taste test with anyone. It's like, show me what is potential in this present moment. I've never witnessed any healing that required my participation. I'm no place, no person, no things. So when you see that, I mean, I've pretty much seen everything from gangrenous flesh go back to pink in color in 40 minutes, bones fuse, tumors disappear, gaseous seal before my very eyes. But these are parts of the transitory stuff that I teach from an alchemical process, because this is the mastery where you get deep into, the side effect of your knowing. But be very cautioned in this knowing that understanding energy potential is not a mastered level of ascension, which a lot of people tend to get distracted by. So in some systems, they call them sitters or things of that nature, where they're enlightened states where you're able to perform these whimsical experiences. And that's good and well, but as you return to your knowing, you should not be distracted by the trappings of unification. So most of my students, I've only ever witnessed 3 people levitate in my lifetime. 2 were Indonesian masters in the jungles, and they have mastered Kundalini, which again, you're referring to something that's similar in relation to chakras and Brahman and things of that nature. These are the types of foundational stuff that they embody and is evidence of your own level of ascension. I think it's profound. And the other person that I've seen levitate is one of my students. And people are like, well, Jufu, if you're so amazing, why don't you levitate yourself? Because I couldn't give a shit about levitating. Levitation is a side distraction. It's about unification for me.
Yeah,
my
I
witness
totally agree. So while I was like on the, meditating a lot and wanting to reach these high levels of consciousness, I read a book and it said exactly that. Don't be distracted with any other, like for example with cities, with energy work, because I had this I felt drawn to help, and I was initiated in Reiki and some other energy healing modalities. And then I read in this book, okay, don't do any other healing work or anything, because it would distract you. And I listened, I didn't, and it also didn't feel right. Although, I mean, I did these initiations, but I didn't really practice them a lot because I didn't want to get stuck. And it's actually very fascinating because I know for most people, when they reach ascension, all the cities are falling away as well. And I don't know why. For me, it only came in the Brahman state, and it's still there. I don't know why, and why these transmissions are coming in, because I know people where everything is falling away. I mean, the interest, for example, in spirituality, meditation, and all of that, this just falls away because there is no necessity for it anymore. Like there is no possibility to go into different levels of consciousness anymore. It used to be very handy. For example, going to the dentist, experiencing so much pain, and then it was possible to go out of my body with my consciousness, and then I didn't have to experience the pain to that extent. But that doesn't work anymore. So this is all gone. Like all these possibilities that was there before, that the energy is doing anything to my system, like to my consciousness, specifically consciousness system. Yes, there is healing and clearing happening. Expansion is always happening. I think this will never stop. Healing and clearing will always happen. It never stops. But the consciousness, there is a point when it can't be changed anymore. So this is what I experienced myself, and talking to other people. Comparison basically, what they're experiencing. It seems to be like that. So, but for some reason, this understanding state, and which I like, because I think it's exciting to work in this field. So
I mean, it really is in a position of a juxtaposed position. So when you're in this state, from a Taoist perspective, most people throw Buddhism and Taoism in the same. Very few people understand Taoism, and they're like, "Oh, some Eastern philosophy, blah blah blah." Yeah, you sit in a lotus position, and you're just one with everything. What happens is something is more mainstream, like a Buddhist understanding, and most of my friends that are Buddhist monks walk the same path. And that's my experience within their sector or monastic path of Buddhism. And there are tons of different ways up the mountain. But let me just say, for a couple of dozen Buddhist monks that I'm very good friends with, their general consensus is, San Qing, I don't give a shit about all that energy, excitement, alchemy crap that you teach people. I want to sit here and I'm looking. What is that old song? Sitting at the height of the watchtower looking down. All they're looking for is dukkha, what they call dukkha, distortion. And as the faster they can remove that distortion, the more they're just sitting within their state of Brahman or however they want to perceive it. Now, that's great. I think that's awesome. That's how you want to use that, because most Buddhist friends that I have just burn their avatar out and move on to their next incarnation. That's their prerogative, and that's how they perceive this lifetime. Well, so if you look at a Buddhist path, it's quite simple. It's a pile of shit covered in diamonds. They grab another diamond, toss it off, and they find more shit. That's their very seed of existence within this lifetime. Now, a Taoist path is absolutely, completely different. It's a pile of diamonds covered in shit, and you dust off some more shit, find another diamond. And so mortality is the very seed of creation for us. So our chemical process is to bring immortality, crystallize it into this material state. That is the mastery of Taoism. Now, 36 years ago, when I witnessed within a stage of 5 to 7 days, I don't know whether you listened to any of my stories, but if you have, it basically goes like this. Never meditated before, spent 10 years as a professional bodybuilder and powerlifter, went straight into meditation, instantly stopped sound for 20 minutes, went from meditation the next day to channel my teacher Latsu. I've been in commune with him second by second basis for 36 years. That is my dialogue within the facet. It's a facet of the diamond. So my dialogue with Latsu and my other 171 teachers is a dialogue to the monologue of the primordial mother. So this is they are the messenger of that high state of knowing, that source, that Akashic record, direct source, the source of source, as you put it, the Brahman, however you want to put it. but the spirit world is very active and very potent and very real. And I spent my lifetime doing simple things from and the reason I did that was I went from channeling my teacher the following day, doing a distant healing the following day, embodying clairvoyance in every sense you ever had, and the following day witnessing a physical healing, having a complete breakdown of like what someone would call a dark night of the soul. And for that, I was then drawn to China. I became ordained in 2 lineages of Taoism as a Taoist priest to give people methods of self-realization. Because I also tell people at this present moment, you can listen to me, and the resonance that I present, that potency can activate and have your self-realization that you are all-knowing. It only takes a fraction of a second. How do I know this? Because I experienced it. So there's a level of ascension for those that are still on the path of self-realization. But furthermore, you can be self-realized by just hanging out with me for a second, because there's only 2 things that come out of that relationship. You either love me or hate me. And then the human traits of the humanistic condition will present itself. If you are harboring resistance to your own self-realization, it will come in the form of, you are my problem. I don't like the way you look. I don't like the way you speak. I don't like the way you say things. And furthermore, I'm like, you're welcome. Anything I can do to help you realize who you are and return to who you are, if that requires me to be the catalyst for your discontent, then that is the starting path and the seed for your self-realization. This is part of it. But losing the sitters, that must be a yogi thing. Within Taoism, they only get stronger. It's like the potency of energy never ceases to dissipate. It only gets stronger. I've got students that have been with me 20 years, and they're like, I cannot explain this, but it's stronger now than it was 20 years ago. It was yesterday, and it continues to magnify itself. So I would say, in reflection, a contemplation or suggestion for an individual that feels as though they have lost this. The thing that I talk about problematic is when someone becomes obsessed because they stay in that level of awareness, not realizing. Because, like I said, the people that I teach all levels of telekinesis, telepathy, ESP, whatever you want to call it, I just call it sensory perception, mediumship, channeling, all that kind of good stuff, healing. It really comes down to how you embody that and what that means to you. And you can stay there. Like I said, those 2 gurus that were Kundalini masters, and this is, I think, a misconception for most people. Most people go, I've had a Kundalini experience because YouTube told me. Well, I would agree that you've had an energetic experience that is profound and you've activated something. What you make of that is up to you. But generally speaking, what happens is people become extremely sensitive to energy. They end up referring to themselves as empaths. They absorb it all because they're in this misconception they need to be protected and fearful of everything around them. And they die some miserable death a few years later because they're so self-consumed with the idea that there's only one path up the mountain. And this is a thing that continually goes on. Massage therapists, light workers, healers, Reiki masters, Qigong masters, they all have this concept because they lean into the yang energy, the material, and that potency of that substance becomes a distraction instead of continuing up the path, realizing they've ascended and accumulated all the extra pieces. If you're playing Mario, you've leveled up to the next level, you're quite another life, you're quite another superpower, and you continue to accelerate. This is a profound thing, but people that master energy doesn't mean they're enlightened. Most of the people I know are assholes. They're not enlightened at all. They're not realizing that this is not I just acquired this and I'm going to stay there. And most people get there. They get there and they're like, oh, I'm a medical intuitive. I can see into your body. I can do all these things. This is fantastic. Yet it can be problematic. I learned that the first time I instantly acquired all sensory perception as all the clear senses immediately arrived with my eyes open. I can see all the energies. 36 years ago, I still see the same. Still today, see the same thing. Instantly be able to see all the auras, energies, information. It's all there. But the question is what does that mean? Because the first time I did it, I said it to this guy, and I said, look, my goodness, you're going to die in like 2 months, 2 weeks, 1 day, and 36 minutes. I can't believe it. This is crazy. And he died in 2 months, 2
Oh my
weeks,
goodness.
2 hours, and 1 minute. And then I said to my teacher, Latsu, I said, what was the purpose of that? I thought you're teaching me to embody this wisdom teaching to help people expand and return to who they are. You must understand that the possibilities are infinite. Okay, what does that mean? That means that you are constantly in this symbiosis of energy potential, electric and magnetic, yin and yang. That means that every breath can be a completion and a creation instantaneously. This is the true nature of reality, meaning that anything is possible, and the probability changes with the commodity is your attention. Your attention is determinative by what you decide is desirous within you, and then you breed it as this belief system through a progression of self-realization. What does that mean?
I mean, I love what you're sharing, and I totally agree with you, and actually have a question for you. So
Sure.
where is the human stuff in all of that? You know, like you have these abilities, you have when you say self-realization, but you know, all the human stuff. So what is Taoism teaching about that? You know,
Well,
the limitations, the human limitations, and the identification, for example.
right. All of the humanistic stuff is transitory because it's the ego state. It's so narcissistic. Like Latsu would answer this question very simply.
I know,
And
but I also just want to know, because it's in the experience. I'm not meaning like ignoring it because it's not real. It's just a human,
right.
but like it's in the experience. So what do you do with the experience?
Well, let's start with Latsu. He would
Yeah.
say, imagine you're like a grain of sand, asking the beach, what are we doing today? Fall back into the beach and be realized. That is the true nature. The ego, the narcissism, the need to be the center is the very distraction. The point that you are so unique and so individual, yet you're all things, which most people tend to speak on this, yet they're all in their mind. That refers to this need, this desire. Well, what about me? These conditions are the basement level stuff that I'll teach any student is
Mm.
your emotions don't control you, you control your emotions. These are nothing more than reverberatory effects of the universe. So you are a micro of a macro.
So
Your
you're
physical
pointing,
body,
yeah. You're
right?
pointing in that direction. Yeah.
Your
Okay.
physical body is such. So from that, the transitory effects are vibrational. Everything is simplistic. Light to wave to matter to particle, realize with your attention, intention, forming what we call dukkha, as my dear friend the Buddhist monk would say, distortion, which is the currency of this realm. We call it dimension, realm, reality. This is the currency. What is that currency? Energy potential. That energy potential is vibratory, frequential, and holds a resonance, whatever it is, whether it's this cup, whether it's this bottle, it all has resonance. Now you can reflect on that and make it myopic, that it's down to it's little old me and how I feel, my triggers and traumas, my past experiences, whatever you want to call it, your past lives. I give people I give them 9 lives. That's it. Because what happens is they fill in the gaps and they become self-realized. But the more and more they become infatuated, obsessed with these transitory things, it deletes from the past. The ultimate goal for any Daoist is to be fully realized as all things. So
Mhm.
no longer are you distracted by,
Mhm.
oh, this is going to affect me. This isn't going to affect me. This is my identity. This is my identity. But to actually achieve that is a level of cultivation, and that becomes an experiential moment that is repeatable, not a transitory state that is fleeting from a psychological perspective. So the distraction is you're human, and there's a mind, body, spirit connection. There is no separation, and that's okay. Everyone starts somewhere, but
Mm.
understanding that you are the body is a very distraction. I will teach people this: when you realize, when you know you are not of this body. What can harm you? Nothing. So then all of a sudden mortality is a secondary component, and immortality becomes more realized, because potential from a physiological perspective would come down to gene expression through the messaging that comes from your self-receptors through the dermal layer into what we call the pituitary, pineary, and thalamus. You create this alchemical fun factory. Within our path, it's called the three treasures. You evoke the chemistry that uses the culture medium of the blood to maestro, have imperium, have dominion over the 50 trillion cells that you consider your flesh and blood. This is the anchoring of what you would call the Shen, the spirit. The spirit is everywhere. The spirit is all things, but you're having this experience. It's like the labyrinth. As you're Sherlock to your Watson, you need to go through that labyrinth from a humanistic perspective, from a human condition, to return on the other side as all things, as a knowing, the human being. And that is where people get so caught up in the traumas, the triggers, the past lives, all this kind of stuff, ancestors. That's fantastic, but it's nothing more than a lens of perception. It starts with the seed of your belief system. If you walk under a ladder and you believe you're going to have bad luck, I promise you, as a creator, as who you are, you will have bad luck. But if you walk under the same ladder and you believe that you're going to have good luck, I promise you, as a creator, you will have good luck. Does this answer any of the questions? Or
Yes, but I'm pointing towards something because, okay, I totally understand what you're talking about, but you can't have so much awareness that you, like, every pattern that pops up, every belief that pops up, every past life influence that pops up, that you can actually act on it, not believing that it's the truth. Life is consuming you. So I'm asking, what is Taoism teaching, what you do with all these energy influences?
Right.
Because I'm just pointing towards that, because my work and what I realized on my journey is that these energies can be removed.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I do. I just remove these energies out of people's system, that they don't have these triggers anymore, or these misunderstandings, or these wrong beliefs and patterns from their family and stuff like that. So that this is all gone, so that they can actually realize the true nature. They have the silence. They're all at all times. This is the goal, and that there is no, so I just call it the human stuff, coming up all the time and veiling the experience, so that the experience of the true nature is there all the time. And then when life is unfolding in the present moment, it's always fresh, because we're experiencing emotions that are only meant to be there in the present moment. Joy, I don't know, whatever. We can also feel annoyed or whatever, but it doesn't get stuck, and it's nothing from the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I just remove energies that are in the system from the past. For example, let's take a small example. You were at a party 2 weeks ago and somebody ate your piece of cake, and you were really annoyed at that person, and you don't want to see that person again. And when we talk about that person right now, it's like, this anger would come up in your system saying, this person ate my cake and I'm absolutely annoyed. So you basically tap into the past. And this is a trigger because this energy got stuck in your system. And what we want to have a clear system so that this doesn't work anymore, that you can't actually tap into the past. It's not a possibility anymore. It doesn't work. You can think about this person who ate your cake, but there is no reaction of the system. It totally stops reacting.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why there is only a present moment, because same thing with the future. We project then, for example, the same situations. I'm never going to meet this person again in the future because it ate my cake, it made me angry. So I project the anger into the future, assuming I would be angry again when I'm meeting this person. Just an example. And so that this doesn't work anymore. And what is it doing? It's actually raising our vibration, getting rid of this low vibrational stuff in the system. And that means our life experience is changing, but not because we want to, because this is the embodiment part. It's just happening because we look into life from a different lens, because we just are on a different vibration. It doesn't work anymore that we like before we did kind of a lot of healing and clearing work, we would look from that lens, and then from a much higher vibrational lens, because reality is always neutral. And it's, yes, we are the creators, we create the reality, but also meaning from where we are looking. And we can, like, on as a practice, we can say, okay, I'm not the ego, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my body, and stuff like that. But it's kind of not really doable, like at all times, all day long, when you go through your everyday life. If you are a monk meditating, in a monastery, and you're not involved in life, it's possible, because there are probably hardly any triggers. I guess, you're just not exposed to life as much as somebody who just is living a normal life, having a job, having children and stuff like that. I mean, I have a baby, like with that, it, like, the embodiment part of this just became more and more, because having the baby, I had to come back from all, like, these levels of consciousness, being in other dimensions and stuff like that, coming back into the human, embodying this. I was basically forced to, because otherwise, it's nice to stay in these higher levels and not, like, care about life. But I had to come back. And so I'm just seeing this from this point of view, because this is my experience, of course. And this is where I can help people with. I can help them to heal and clear their system, so that specifically when they're looking for their true nature, that they can actually experience it, but at all times effortless. And not that they have to, do it in an active way to be the self of self-realization. For example, when I had the experience of unity consciousness, energetically, a few things happened. So I saw, it was just an analogy, my skin flowing off. So I became one with everything. So the layer, the energetic layer that made me separate, left my system. So I became one with everything. Then I saw everything I thought who I was. So Eva and my whole life, like all the stories, was like an energetical ball in the center of my system, in the end of my chest, and it was just removed. So there was a hole. And then my ego was pulled into the background. So basically, it was fed before by energy. So all day long, I did this. I was feeding the ego with the energy. I thought I was the ego, and also I was feeding this bubble in the center of my chest, this light ball, with all my stories and all of that. And suddenly, all this was removed. So it's basically, I was coming from a totally different perspective, experiencing life, and because the feeding of these. So in that case, the ego and this energy ball in the center of my chest, this was energetically happening. And you cannot just not do it, because it's part of our system. It's just happening all the time. Like, we can, if we are very aware, we can decide, okay, I am not the ego. But you, like, have to be in a very light moment, because if you're in an argument, or if you are experiencing something that you don't prefer and stuff like that, this will be not your main experience, right? Because the ego pops in right away. Even though it's in the background, it will jump forward. If you don't have the healing and clearing done, if you don't have the seeing, the actual experience of it. So that's what I mean. If you just practice it, if you just practice, I'm not the ego, but if the ego is actually gone in the background, and if that identification ball is gone as well, that the constantly feeding of these concepts, of these energy concepts, or these energies in our system are gone. And then the experience is just constantly different.
Yeah. So, do you want me to tell you how Taoism works with that?
Yeah. So I wanted to know that.
Absolutely. So, as I will regress back to something I said a few moments ago. Everything is energy potential, right? So everything has vibration, frequency, and is met with a resonance. All of it. So the three ingredients from a humanistic perspective is a thought, feeling, and emotion. That's it. It starts and ends with that. They are the three ingredients that exist within this space of material. And the more and more you invest your attention, you will form more and more of these different variable resonance that will have potential. Glass bottle, emotions within your physical body. But there's a progression we like to call the spark of desire, divinity, that requires inquiry. The inquiry creates contemplation. Contemplation then breeds curiosity. Curiosity develops hopium. Hopium is potent. Hopium then blossoms into a belief system. This is where most people get stuck, because your belief system is met with a construct of your perception of reality, which is founded on your experience. So from jumping to a belief system to a knowing is subjective, and is only met with what you can create, what is possible within your perception of reality. So that knowing can be problematic if not met with a higher awareness of a developmental state, which comes from what we call Daoist alchemy. So Nidan is internal alchemy. Nigong is basically the power that possess within you, which is what we refer to Fajin. And so once you access, it's called the point of no return, where you detach from everything and then you attach as everything. So that means that this would be possibly on the same line of what you call Brahman, but we call it the primordial mother. That means that I can tell you to go fuck yourself. I can be in complete violation and angry and met with psychotic homicidal thoughts. And because I am resonating at that state, and that's the deception. Nigong means that you are all things at once. That means multitasking is off the table. You're not doing like, oh, I'm doing 2 or 3 things and transmitting this energy. I mean, the most people I've ever had in one healing physically was 1,000. I've done 10,000 online. Yes, it's a potency. You just link them all together. They all come with the same purpose. They want to heal. It's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. They will be met with that realization. So once you become the primordial mother, you're all things. You are not asking. Your attention intention forms this maestro effect, the dominion, the imperium. You are attached to everything. That means that instantaneously it becomes realized, and the probability of that is met with your attention. But it's vibratory. You must be able to master that state. So we get back to the thought, feeling, and emotion. This is basement level stuff for a Daoist path, a Daoist rite. So a seeker will start there. I teach all willing alchemists that want to start that your emotions don't control you, you control your emotions. So that's the basement level stuff. So with that, you realize that the thought, feeling, and emotion are ingredients. The
But
feeling
what
and
is
emotion.
what is when you just have like emotions coming up? I mean,
But
how?
I'm just about to get to that. So
All
the
right.
emotion and the feeling is energy. That's it.
Mm.
So I teach people, the first thing I start with, and they're on a path of expansion, is that you can basically, like Spider-Man, move your feeling and emotion off a computer screen like an icon in a fraction of a second. And that's a mastery that most people takes about, honestly, 9 weeks. I have an app I developed, so I don't even really bother sharing that with anyone. I don't teach. If I have students, it's much deeper alchemy, or disciples is a different thing. But for the majority of people, like accountants, jury, judges, police officers, and things like that, their response is, holy shit, I'm as high as a kite. I'm in tax season. I'm up to my eyeballs and nothing moves my needle because I am in the center point. Because you erase the emotion and the feeling, which is energy, and you can maintain the thought if you choose to as a reflection of wisdom. But quite frankly, again, another transitory state of the human condition. As you're on this path, you start to realize that these are all transitory and your participation is not required. And it's the ability to master the energy that it no longer becomes an obstacle. So you're in complete flow as Wu Wei, synchronized and serendipitous. And if someone drops a pile of horse shit in your river, you wash it away because you are the water. You are potent. You go where no man goes. And through that consistency of repeatable experiences, and that's the most important thing. It's like when I teach someone something, the first time I meet them, they will be able to master that energy and they will show it to themselves through an exercise that I share with my students. Because blind faith is a delusional thing. Oh, yes, the reason that most people, and if you haven't had this, I'll be very surprised, because this is a very problem with healing or healers or all this kind of stuff, is, oh my goodness, I had a profound transmission, but when you left, it left. It takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. It will be a progressive thing. That's bullshit, because it happens instantaneously, as is the completion and the creation or birth of things, which is what we consider the bellows effect as a Daoist. So when you get a transmission from Lao-Tzu, it's a permanence that elevates your resonance. If I'm witnessing that, you'll see that. So when you simplify things down to these very ingredients and you understand how to master the alchemy, these types of things are infantile at the baseline. And once you realize that you can move the emotion and the feeling at will, you are no longer distracted. As you would say, the ego jumps in. This very premise or construct is founded in a belief system, which has not been met with a knowing, because you're still believing that that has dominion over you, where it does not, because you're all things. If you're all things, that is an impossibility, and that resonance never leaves you. That means that no matter what, and I'll give you an example. I'm driving down the road. A cop pulls me over. I got my kids and my wife in the car. And he pulls behind me and he puts his hand on his holster and he starts walking up to the car. I have tinted windows. He goes, wind the windows down, wind the windows down. So I bring the windows down, my wife and my kids. I have 6 kids and a wife. And he's
Do
like,
you really have 6 kids or just in the story? Oh,
No,
wow. Amazing.
So I have 6 kids. My youngest is 1 year, 3 months. My eldest is 12 years. And they have never distracted me from my path of self-realization. They've enhanced it, if anything, because I've taught them these very powerful alchemy processes, and they're incredible lights of incredible potency individually and collectively. But anyway, so he gets to the window, he goes, give me your license and registration, you're speeding. I was 10 miles over the speeding limit. But the purpose of this is to return as a catalyst and conduit of this resonance. The sole purpose from a Daoist path is to return all to a state of knowing. And from that means that most people will realize that it happened on its own, not with the inception or interruption of my identity that you are aware of yourself. There is a path that comes with that. So this guy's coming up hostile. I had already merged and amplified the resonance. When he got to the car and he was demanding my license and registration, the first words that came out of my mouth was, is there any reason why you want to draw your firearm on my family? Give me your license and registration. Now, he's still picking up on the residual resonance that has already been imbued within his own state and returning him to whole. And so by the time my personality, because my personality is my personality, I'm not erasing that. I like chocolate bonbons. I drive my side-by-side in the desert at 100 miles an hour, and I watch Netflix. That has nothing to do with the present moment of healing. Has nothing to do with it. When people want to virtue signal and erase themselves, they are in a path of self-destruction, because this is the gift of the human condition. You want to be a human, you want to ascend to a human being, but the condition is this, that you as a mortal get to experience this incredible mastery of this symbiosis. So he comes back with my license and registration and he goes, you have such a beautiful family. Can you please not speed again? And you have a great day. And people, my wife's like, well, there you go. This is what happens, because I had already implemented the resonance. My personality has nothing to do with the actual remembrance of that energy. And what happens? What's the potency? What's the purpose of this whole thing? The purpose of me being pulled over by that guy was for him to remember. So not did he go home that night and beat his wife. He went home and he had a nice meal with his wife and his 2 children. And he thought about how grateful he was just to be alive. That is what this is about. You become in servitude and selflessness. This is the potency of a Taoist path anyway. That is the true level of ascension. And what happens is you unlock that sentience of the human being. And guess what? You reveal the potency of empathy. And that empathy is for everyone. If you look anywhere and find anything other than perfection, you are still on your path of self-realization. And that's completely perfection manifest. But the emotional content is transitory and met with alchemy mastery, which doesn't take very long, you can instantly acquire that state of homeostasis, the vesica, the center point, the primordial mother. And people just get high as a kite. I don't care whether you're a janitor at McDonald's or you're the Dalai Lama. When you apply my app, it works on a visual and audible experience through the neurology of your physical body, taking Maestro, which gives you a visceral, kinesthetic, somatic response, which is your validator. As we've been talking about through this whole conversation, it has to do with the feeling.
Yeah.
Feeling is the evidence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, thank you so much for sharing. I think it's so interesting. And yeah, I mean, I of course I see it in the similar way, because we, like, everything we experience on the outside is a projection of our own consciousness, and where we at on the inside, this is what we're experiencing on the outside. So like the cop, if we are in a high state, in a good state, in a high vibrational state, he's not gonna come in an angry way. Like, it doesn't
No.
come
That's
together
not
that
it.
way.
That you
Yeah.
missed the point. It wasn't my resonance. It was his. He met with that resonance, which made him return. So the interaction was to connect with that, so that then he would become whole. So me moving through my path, I'm transmitting this 24/7.
All right. Yeah, I get it.
It wasn't for me to be the personality. I'm angry, so then this guy's going to come to. No. It has to do with that resonance is there, and because of Nigong, which is a mastered state of you are all things at once. You could be your personality, you could be an asshole, you could be a guru. The resonance doesn't leave you, and it will present itself through that state. And that's where people are drawn to it, or they're repelled to it within this dualistic perspective, because this is the substance that we're moving in, which is the symbiosis of electric and magnetic potential. And once met, if you want to talk about it from a physics perspective, as a dear friend of mine just spoke about it, it's what we call the 0 point, the scalar wave. You are now merging as one. It's beyond the measurable electromagnetism of this realm. This is why magical things take place. So my moving through my path, the purpose of that interaction was for him to become whole. So he returned to that. And this happens to me dozens of times in a day.
Wow. Yeah,
without
beautiful.
even try, because I'm not trying, because I am admitting this state as that is my true default. My personality has my requirement to witness is all. My participation is zero. It's not necessary, but this is a cultivational practice. This is something that must be met with a repeatability that you can validate it for yourself. It's not something that's a delusional state of conception that most people talk about. I'm the Brahman, I'm the universe, I'm the cosmic consciousness, I'm a healer, I'm a this, I'm a that. That's fantastic. Show me. I want to see it. And that's the potency that I'm speaking about, is being able to embody that and be the now moment, which is you're all things and nothing at the same time. And that is a paradox for most people in attempting to wrap their mind around it until they acquire that state of resonance. And that's where I went through the physical body, the energy body, spiritual body, sun body, moon body, earth body, oneness body, ultimate, and then being. And that can be met at an exponential rate, where if you listen to me and you're ready to return to who you are, all my 36 years of awakening that happened 36 years ago can be met instantaneously in this same freaking breath, if that's what's your path, if that's what you're meeting, your belief system is right now. So it doesn't mean that you are going to have to go through a processes, because I instantaneously remembered who I was 36 years ago. All this stuff was handed to me instantly. And so there was no in between. And so, all this kind of stuff is you have different degrees of awareness, which is everyone's journey. Where are you at in your own journey, is my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I went through a path, because this is what I basically, I learned that there is a path and I have to follow these levels of consciousness. And this was perfect for me. I loved it. It was such amazing experience. But now also realizing the true nature, and with the energy transmission I work with, basically people can experience parts of the true nature already. So this is just how I explain it, coming through the human, into the human experience, basically piercing through the human wall, or the human identification, that it can be experienced in the present moment. So parts of the true nature, pure beingness. So as you call it, everything but nothing at the same time. And yeah, so I love to hear your perspective and your way of describing it. That was so interesting. So thank you for sharing.
Well, yeah, I think people get distracted. When I get someone who's got nothing to do with the spiritual path but can master their emotions, which is just energy potential. This is why I always remind people: just because you're actively energetic, whether you're an empath or any type of sensory perception, means nothing if you're looking for an ascended state of all-knowing, being the now moment. It doesn't require any of those things, but most people love that stuff. They get started. I love it. I still love it. My teaching is basically Big Trouble in Little China meets The Last Airbender. They have a baby. This is the stuff that I've been doing for 36 years up and down the peninsula. I've got hundreds, thousands of stories of healings. Furthermore, deep in the bowels of Chinatown in San Francisco, and some really mystical shit that would curl the hairs of the back of your neck, and furthermore turn you into something. I should write a book at some point, because
you should.
So many. But
36 years of experience. I mean, that's so much that I'm sure you have so much to share.
But it's the same thing with you. Just because whatever the timeline is humanistic, you've been doing this for thousands of years. If you look closer, you've seen yourself doing this over and over again. So I'm just talking about biologically aware in this lifetime, but I've done it thousands of times. So, and that would be the same position that you're in. So the timeline of the human condition is kind of interesting, and it does present incredible stories, and it's all about the now moment, though, right?
I mean, that's what we are left with, I guess, but that's in the end, there is like this full embracing of the human experience in the present moment, and that's all there is, and that's fine. And before, there is the looking for something more and something out there, and and this is what it comes down to. And it's beautiful, because we can just live the human life in the present moment and allowing life to unfold, and that's really it. So it's very simple in the end.
Well, it can be. It's really, again, you say tomato, I say tomato. I mean, because Daoist magic, which is one of my favorite things to teach people, is predicated on someone believing in karma. Like we lay those grids down, and we move the energies within this material state only for the individual seeker, or the people that move into that space are subject to their own belief system. Karma is a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's all it is. So if you believe in karma, it's going to find you. And furthermore, that's how the magic works within Taoism, as we mimic the vibratory effects of the universe in a grid on the planet Earth. We move these energies around, and some people will refer to things as feng shui. I teach people what we call body dowsing, where you identify power centers, ley lines, grids, vortices. All these things are met with yourself as a barometer or tuning fork. That's why the physical flesh is such an incredible gift, because you start to realize that you can measure all these things. The individual energetic profiles are individual. There are an infinite amount of spirits and energies out there, and your perception, like, for example, exorcisms, which is one of my fortes as a Taoist priest, one of my lineages, my monastic path, that is the very structure of that monastery was exorcisms. He was a badass exorcist, Jean Darlene. And so, I'm taught how to do exorcisms. That's great. So they spin around like the movies, and they throw themselves across the room and all that kind of great stuff. That's being exercised. All it is, as we'll get right back to, my friend, energy. Yes, those entities are very tangible, but it's all seated within that experience's belief system. So if you call wolf, you're going to find that. If you believe in the energies of Freddy Krueger, then you are going to be met with the dark, this sort of seedy bowels of Wes Craven's mind. that formed that through his own belief system that creates a construct that is substantive, that is tangible, and you will experience it. I mean, entities are everywhere.
Definitely. I have a cool story. So I was working on somebody, and I usually don't do exorcisms, or I usually don't. People don't find me usually who have entities and stuff. So I work with a different crowd. But this specific person had evoked some demonic energy from reading a book, and I felt it. And just the days before, I was also reading a book about different dimensions and how we can, like, we can actually interact with these dimensions if we want to. And this just came into me in this session, because I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this demon now, because it's here. And then I got it, I took it and put it into a different timeline, different dimension, into a different dimension. And it worked, and this was a learning for me to understand, okay, I of course I am creating, so the energy, my consciousness is creating a framework of how I can use the energy, and it's coming through my system. So I have a certain way of working with it through my belief system, through concepts I'm creating, and this is different for everybody, right? And I totally agree. All potential is there. We just need to act on it. We just need to do it, to use the potential, to experience it, because we can sit at home, do nothing, think about it. But if we just go out and or do those healings and just be creative in these healings and use whatever just comes up, it's just consciousness is showing us a tool, or you could pull out this demon and demonic energy and put it into a different dimension. Then I just did it that way, and we can work with it in various different ways. I also pulled, like, one time I thought I had one, and somebody gave me like a recipe of creating holy water with salt, and I did a salt pass and stuff like that. It also worked. So there are so many different possibilities that are working, and I think it's so amazing, because so many people are just drawn to different healers, different way of healings, different paths of awakenings. And I just think it's very amazing that we have such a big variety.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, all the years I've been doing exorcisms, I have a fond remembrance of, I was doing a channeling class with about 20 students, probably 20 years ago. And my mother's like, can I come? Can I do the class? I'm like, okay, cool. Anyway, one of the students who was obsessed with being the big badass exorcist, like out of the movies and all that kind of good stuff. I'm like, okay, that's fine. You're on that path. The most potent origin of that is that you must realize fear does not exist. You must be fearless to enter into this space, or it will return to you and find you. This is part of just the premise of this. So, she would come to class constantly with anywhere between 100 and 200 entities like clingers, just constantly feeding from her source energy. And so, you're constantly clearing these things off, like dusting off a bookcase. It's interesting, but I'm not going to turn my back on her, as we always remind ourselves, cast the wicked away and draw that person closer. That is a very nature of a Daoist path, this self-realization. So anyway, she gets going. She's channeling her so-called benevolent energy, and the other students asking her questions. Then I watch all these entities start moving in and out of her field, back into her body, coming out. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I go, just step aside. Let me have a conversation with this benevolent energy. And I start having a conversation. Next minute, it goes south, and she starts convulsing. Her eyes roll to the back of her head. She swings around and gets thrown to the other side of the room. I take some of my teachers, Guanggong and Wei Tu, which are two very potent energies that I use within my practice and within my temple. And see, what people need to understand is this stuff is ancient. So we've handed this stuff down for generation to generation for hundreds of thousands of years. It is fucking real. So when you get into this potency, understand that this stuff is not a delusional state. And if you're met with fear, and that is your construct of karma, and you're not prepared to level up, all of a sudden it just promotes a bunch of shit that you have to contend with that starts deep within the seed of the flesh. And so I exercise these particular energies, and my mother goes, holy shit, this is real. I'm like, right. Because this is, if you watch any exorcisms, that's exactly what takes place. It's all it is an unraveling of energy that is met with a specific incantation, and furthermore, specific entities or spirits, in my case, will enter in and basically, like a bouncer at a nightclub, remove these entities. But there is a level of surrender that comes with the individual, or it will return. It's transitory. And this is what happens, the problematic effects of healing, is people like, oh my goodness, I went to this healer, it's amazing, they healed me, and 3 days later it came back.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the foundations. They're not they're not able to hold that resonance, because this vehicle has not been primed and met with the ability to contain and hold that resonance, so it's a permanence. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I also had an experience with an entity once, and I went to a healer, and she said to me, it's gonna have a, how did you put it? Like a echo. And this was very amazing because, it's actually coming back, but you think it's an echo. So you're not allowing it to basically come back. So this just helped to keep the space. You feel it coming back, right? And if you don't think it's an echo, but it's real, there would be fear, and then it's back right away, right? You can't do anything about it. But because she said it's an echo, and I believed it, I created this space, then it couldn't come back. And so there are these little possibilities that we can use.
Well, yeah. Whenever exercising, the major goal of any exorcism is to return to whole. So I've never met an entity, only one in 36 years, where I literally spent 4 hours negotiating with this entity, because
also, sorry, you bring the entity itself back to the whole. This is what you're doing. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I'll explain it. So when you bring it back to whole, what dissolves it and basically destroys its directive and mandate is putting them in a state of resonance that would reflect. And it's always this same thing, because it's still only one aspect of the human condition, yet it is a huge potency. It's always love. Love is not wholeness. Understand this. Remember this. I need people to get this very straight, because when you're all things and nothing, it is not just love that's going to do it. That's why people can't manifest and heal. They believe that they just, let me feel from the heart. I'm just going to feel the love, and the love is going to come in. That is one aspect of being whole. Be very clear on that. And it comes from a human condition. But for whatever reason, from an exorcism perspective, that potency is necessary to return that entity and have it retreat and dissolve and meet the individual that needs that. That's the whole purpose. They are in self-loathing. They are oppressed, depressed, possessed. That's the order of effects. And so it comes in this very dampening, dormant depression and self-loathing and isolation that is generally the consensus of anyone that I've ever come across that needs an exorcism. And that will show you in those traits of that emotional state, that mental state, is this very evidence. And furthermore, it will look like a personality disorder, schizophrenic, bipolar. All these things are evidence of this energy that is feeding from the physical body. And all that's going on with that individual is they are not met with understanding how to become whole. They're lacking this particular potency. And when they return to it, oh my, the entity disappears. Mm-hmm. Now, that 4-hour one was met with this girl that was raped and killed in that house that I had to basically completely, it was like something out of Harry Potter. And it was luring the husband and wife who slept in separate bedrooms with their newly adopted daughter that was only 3 years old. It was luring them into the place where the rape and the murder took place, which was the kitchen. So every night the mother would be whispered, "Mommy, come and help me." And she would hear her daughter that's sleeping in her bed in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And the entity would bring them in. And they would individually have these experiences, but never shared it with each other, right? Okay. And then they go back and they see the daughter laying in the bed, and the dampness that was presented, and there's all evidence of smell and vision and existence will start with that dampness, and it was so potent. Like, I was like very impressed with the abilities of these particular entities, because I was witnessing a healing on one of them, and the daughter came out of nowhere. It was like the light opened up and she walked through a door and said, "Hi, I'm waiting for my mommy and daddy." And I'm like, wow, okay. And so I started having a conversation with her, and then this demonic energy rose from her, and they were both playing. There was actually 3 of these entities that were playing and praying, using her as a vehicle. And so she's still waiting for her parents, and these entities were feeding from it. That was the uncle that murdered and raped her. And so, I mean, ultimately she returned, they returned, but it was like a negotiation. Like I was in some sort of like a poker game, which I've never experienced, because once you meet them with the resonance, they literally dissolve instantaneously and they return, and they're grateful. And they're grateful because that individual is met with what is in lack of from their center point. And it's always that particular ingredient, which is love, and that depression and that oppression starts there. It starts with the isolation. And people go, holy shit, that's exactly what I'm experiencing. You're welcome. And this happens to so many people. It's a very common thing now, because there's a very clear resonance of an indoctrinated sort of self-programming that comes with society today, through social media, through the internet, through electrical devices. You are being isolated at will. And so these energies start to present themselves more and more as you become less and less aware of who you are and the nature of who you are. You become more and more deficient. You become more and more hopeless, helpless, and in fear of, because this is what you're doing. You're isolating yourself from yourself, which in turn means your community, your family, your relationships. And people don't get it until they need to get it, because it's like, holy shit, I need a Ghostbuster. I end up there. And furthermore, it turns into, and I honestly haven't done an exorcism in probably 10 years. Then all of a sudden I got a fire sale, like over 40 people in the last couple of months. And it's just part of the potency of what's going on today. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I love that you are referring to them as just energy, because this is also how I see everything. So I don't see specific beings. I see energy qualities and their information, basically.
Well, they're only there if they're constructed. So everything is just frequency. That's a Daoist path. It's only met with an entity that has been generated from the individual's path of seeking. So, I'll look at someone's aura and, I'll be hanging out with Jesus Christ or God or Buddha or universe, whatever is met with their belief system that is still in question. It's in jeopardy of a knowing. The knowing is determined by the experience. So they keep feeding the belief system with these very transitory experiences that have to be slam dunk with a knowing. And that knowing doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. It's just what it means to them. What is their idea of good and bad? Like, love to me might be unicorns and rainbows, and to you it's bunny rabbits and razor blades. And subjectively, as you continually raise your resonance through cultivational practices, you return to that unified state where you are selfless and in servitude, which you cannot fight. You cannot fight it. It's just the nature of who you are. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. I love what you're sharing. I also see it in that way. And the transmission I'm working with, so the transmission of the highest truth, pulls you towards your personal highest truth. This is what you call the center point of resonance. I guess it's the same thing, because if people are connected to that energy, all these things would fall away, anyways, because it's not of their highest truth. The energy just helps people to get rid of
it. It regulates everything. So you're now a macro of a micro. So energy potential by regulating the energy centers we call dantians in energy elixir. Those energy centers, when I look at someone's aura, they have an excess of deficiency. So I can get your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual state in about 30 seconds just by looking at their aura. So you will see in excess or deficiency, and that's like reading a menu. And people are like, how the fuck do you do that? I'm like, because I'm not invested in it. I couldn't care less whether you tell me I'm the next coming of Jesus or I'm Moses parting the sea. I'm reading information that is in front of me. It just so happens that it reveals the very nature of who you are through the information that is present within your auric field. It's not a big aha moment, but it must be mastered through a cultivational practice that can be met instantaneously. If you develop these skills, it happens immediately. And people are like, holy shit, because you look at where their energies lie, and then I'm shown the emotion to virtue, excess to deficiency. Where are you met? And that just creates a profile of your mental emotional state, which is where they're at. And they're like, holy shit, that's not cool. That's aura. I think so, whatever. I don't really care.
I mean, really cool, really cool that you do it that way. I share how I do it. So when I bring in this high vibrational divine energy, I just see the low vibrational energies popping up, basically. So this is where I see the deficiencies are, and then I can just remove them for people. But I share it so that they also know it, so it's in their awareness. And at the same time, the energy is also working on deeper layers, like layers I don't see, or I don't get the information from. But what I'm getting, it's just important for people so that they know what's happening, what's been healed and cleared in their system, so that they have the awareness of that. I would love to do a little meditation if you.
Yeah.
What I do is I call in the energy. It will come in. It will take me like half a minute to set up the framework of this session or of this meditation. And then I start sharing. And at the same time, I'm using my hands and I'm working on people's energy field. So in your energy field and everybody who's watching then in the future, because, this healing is basically stored on an energetic level. So it doesn't really matter at what time you watch it, it's always there anyways. And then I just do whatever is for everybody's highest good and whatever needs to come through today. And
Excellent.
for how long? Like, do we have like 15 minutes or something like that?
Probably about 5 to 10.
5 to 10. All right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be fast.
The express version. There you go.
Please, energies, be fast today. So I recommend just sit back, relax, close your eyes, and meditate along. And it's really important just to be very relaxed and in an open and receptive state. So that's all you need to do on your end. And I start.
I've been high as a kite for the last hour and 38 minutes. So you're a potential.
I feel the energy.
Yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I'll start. I start with opening up the energy field. Bring in light. Then I expand the energy field. Expanding the energy field helps to hold more light in the system, and also more awareness comes with that as well. So I'm expanding, and the energy field can always be more expanded. So this is a never-ending process. Then I fill up the expanded space with light. Then I clear surface energies. So surface energies are all sorts of energies you've been exposed to over the past 1 or 2 days, and also emotions that are floating around the top of your system. Emotions are also just energies. So I'm clearing those. And those are just the energies that make the noise. And behind there is the silence, the inner peace. So this is what we want more of. So I clear the surface energies, and I also clear thoughts. Thoughts are also just energy on the mind level. Okay, and then I open up the central energy channel. The central energy channel is where life is flowing through the system, life energy. It flows from the root to the crown chakra, falls back down left and right in all directions, and flows up again, and so on. And what we want is as much life energy flowing as possible, because it pulls us more and more into the present moment until eventually the mechanism that we can experience a past and the future just collapses and it's gone for good, so that we always only experience the present moment at all times. Yeah, and right away, the energy that's pulling you towards your true nature is present. So the humanness gets pulled aside, all the human aspects, everything that's part of the humanness, and the true nature is coming forward so that you get a full experience of it right now. Is this expansive space that's pure silence, pure existence, always lives, it never dies. It contains everything. Everything you can think of is contained by the true nature. So the energy is pulling you more and more into the true nature, into that experience. So in that space, there is no life story. There is no identification of who and what you are. There is no other. There is no 3D reality or other dimensions. It's just pure existence itself. And I anchor for you this experience in your heart chakra, so that you have like a connection, and that your system knows where to move towards. So it's like a pathway. It knows now the true nature. Your system knows what it is. It has an understanding of it, and it knows this is where it needs to go to, or this is where it needs to transition to for good. And by anchoring it in the heart chakra, it just knows the pathway now. So it's easy and simple to get there as fast as possible. Okay. Okay. That was a bit more than 5 minutes.
Well, I'm high as a kite. What can
It
I
came
say?
through right away. The most important stuff came through right away. So that's amazing. Yeah, the energy is really strong. Absolutely amazing. So,
Yeah, no, high as a kite.
mm.
Interesting how your aura just would move back and forth. Like, do you have any relationship with Shakti or any sort of like Indian sort of yogis? I find that interesting. You
Yeah, I
thank
mean, I received Shakti, but a few hundred times probably. So this energy of Shakti, and I was meditating
Shiva.
with
Shiva, that's her name. Shiva.
Shiva.
Hmm.
Um,
Like a blue. It's a blue entity that resembles. It could be between like the green Tara and Shiva, and so these are interesting Indian elements, which I guess it's related to some of the stuff you've been through. But then you
yeah,
just brought back to this like really vibrant emerald sort of like auric field with this nice, very clear line of gold, which for anyone on a path of understanding these type of mechanisms, gold is an element of ascension that only comes when you are merging with a higher state. So when you see that in someone's field, it's evidence of that state of awareness, which I think is cool.
cool. I'm glad you're seeing this. And I mean, it's cool for people to know that they are receiving it, right? When they're sitting in the transmission, they are receiving it as well.
I'm
And
still receiving it. I didn't
yeah,
stop. I didn't stop when you first started, but I'm also I have a reputation of being an aura dipper, so I'm going to experience every energy potential that's available. The idea that you are not me and I am not you is a delusion. You're me and I am you. So whatever energy you're presenting, I will experience it instantaneously the second you share, which is immediate. So
yeah.
that's been going on for this whole conversation, which is I'm grateful because I'm as high as
Yeah, yeah. I experienced strong energy through the whole conversation as well, and I loved it. And I thought it was so interesting, and I loved to hear your understanding of things. And yeah, it just completed also some just just some understanding on my end. So thank you so much, and it was so lovely meeting you in person now, not just on YouTube.
yeah, it's a real pleasure, my dear friend. We'll have to do this again.
I would love to.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would love to.
And I'm going to put your social sphere and interweb under this podcast where people can find you for collective community transmissions 101. I'm sure you offer many different things, teachings, other things of that nature. I will ask you one last thing. What is your definition of spiritual consciousness?
What my definition of spiritual consciousness is, I don't have one. It's an experience. Like it can only experience it. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it.
Mm. All
Hundreds of
right.
podcasts later, never got the same answer as I should not, because we are all facets of the same diamond. You say tomato, I say tomato. It all comes back to the same consciousness, which is one. And with that,
Beautiful.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you for sharing your time with us today. I'm very grateful to remember our friendship. And once again, we are reunited. That is a beautiful thing. And furthermore, I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. And finally, I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Daoist Master San Qing. And I'll see you in the next one, guys.